Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, how are you? Oh, more. It's August 24th. Council work session.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start the work session for this evening. It's nice to have our guests in the audience, and of course, TVF&R will be giving us their presentation. If you want to bring up your agenda on Granicus. And at least my orientation's correct tonight. The last meeting I could only get it in portrait style rather than the other, and then halfway through all of a sudden it just switched around, so I don't know whether it was just a delayed reaction or whether it was actually having sympathy on me. I will be chairing tonight's meetings at 6 o'clock and begin at 7 o'clock as well. The mayor is hoping to join us at about 7:30, and that depends on what's happening over at George Fox. As you know, George Fox has hundreds and hundreds of people on campus. They're bringing all of the freshmen on board here, and of course we'll find out if this is the largest freshman class ever. But maybe it's not second largest class, Joe's telling me here. But of course, such a privilege to have George Fox University in town here. A roll call, please.
Mr. Council President, all present with the exception of Mayor Andrews.
In review of the council minutes, anything that anybody has to draw to our attention, council minutes and the yeah.
Yes, I'll have something to talk
For the
about.
minutes now? You have any correction to the minutes?
Oh, are we on the minutes right now? Oh, I thought we had to wait until the regular time. Yes, I do. Let me see.
The consent calendar, basically.
It's under the consent calendar, right. So that's under the other one. It's on, let's see if we can get to it. Roll call, fire service.
You have a page number?
Yeah, it's page 6. But it's actually 4. Let's see.
Page 4?
Yeah. Yeah, let's see if I can get it. Let me see if 6 is the right one. I think 6 and 4 is the same thing.
Is it language
Yeah, there we go.
correction? Is it?
Let me look real quick. Okay, yeah, it's under deliberations.
Page?
Let me look again. I think it must be up on 4. I have it on mine here, and I had a page, so I wouldn't have to go through this deal. 3.
Page 6, maybe?
Here, let me look, see if I can find it on
I think it's page 6, Councilor Wilson.
What it was the issue having to do, I'm going to council meeting in the gym.
That's the wrong one. I want to go to 7 o'clock.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, get me there. And then I'll have roll call, council minutes. There we go. And then there.
Right-hand side there.
There we go. And page 6 of 10. So let's go to page 6. And I've got a note here. Sorry, guys. You hit me a little early. Yeah, here it is. Let's see, and this is actually page 4 at the bottom, but it's page 6 of 10. And it is me see if I can get that up here. Okay. It starts, Councilor Bacon asked about the speed limit analysis and the left turn from C.E. Hoffman. Explained the design speed was 25 miles an hour. And about 85% of the existing traffic through the corridor went 32 miles an hour. When they did the engineering study, they looked at the existing speed on the road and the 40 mile per hour curve. How fast people would go once the road was built, they did not know. They were being conservative using the 40 mile per hour curve rather than the 25 mile per hour curve. So I was confused by this. I wanted, for the record, to know I really didn't understand what that meant.
Denise,
it was designed at 25, but
I asked a question. This is
an interpretation of the question?
Answer it back to me.
right. So what I didn't understand is it's designed at 25 miles an hour, but they used a 40 mile per hour curve. So was that the entire length of the, were we expecting that, well, for instance, in some of the comments I heard back, it was, well, you couldn't go over 25 miles per hour under the bridge without exceeding engineered speed limit. It could only be 25 miles under the bridge, but it was 40 miles per hour on the top, and I just didn't understand what the 40 mile an hour curve meant.
As a matter of understanding in the minutes here on whatever, Karen Hoffman, please, do you have a better explanation than what appeared in the minutes?
City Engineer Hoffman. So if I understand correctly, the actual design of the new roadway, so when the roadway is done, is based on a 25 mile an hour design speed. The left turn lane, the 40 mile an hour curve that people have been talking about is for the left turn lane, and that is what Kittleson used to evaluate whether or not a left turn lane was necessary, and they used existing traffic. So the existing speed of traffic today when they did that analysis. So that's the difference. Is the design itself is 25 miles per hour, but the Kittleson report used the 40 mile an hour curve because today's traffic goes, 85% of them are going 32.
Would that be true under the bridge too, or was that just on the left turn lane?
It was there were counts taken exactly under the bridge, if that makes sense. There were counts taken in a couple of different locations.
So in this particular case, bridge means trestle.
Yes.
All right. So, Mr. Essen, does that clarification meet to your specification? And then Denise, does that kind of match up with the direction that you were going there? So later on during the meeting, we'll ask for correction to the minutes, or passage of the minutes as per corrected. That makes sense to everybody?
Yes.
Matt, you're in a situation to where you're learning here as you go. Matt will be sworn in at the 7 o'clock hour as the new councilman, District 2. And so at this particular portion in the meeting, the District 1, excuse me. Oh, I'm District 2. Hey, I was looking to get out of this job. Oh, don't anybody write that down now, all right? So, yeah. Anyway,
You can push these
it's at
buttons
this portion of the
and all this
meeting
stuff.
that anything that's going to be considered under the consent calendar gets taken
Yeah, they
care
go to
of
7
here,
o'clock, even though you're
and
6
then
o'clock.
we pass the motion as amended in the 7 o'clock meeting here. All right? Any other additions and/or correction to the minutes? Anything for agenda or Patrick, are you going to pull one of the items on agenda?
I did send a number of questions. I got those answered. I don't want to waste the council's time with that. I can send it out in an email if you'd like, but it's not going to change the way I voted. I just wanted to understand the process.
The reason I'm bringing it up, I did ask Karen about that. I think Doug Rux brought it up to me earlier in the day there. Council and the public doesn't know a whole lot about the cards over there. So if you want to, we wouldn't spend a whole lot of time in the 7 o'clock meeting, but if it's something that you would like to see in the minutes of the regular meeting, you're welcome to bring that up. Your choice is?
Are you guys prepared to maybe just talk a little bit about that, Doug, or I don't want to put staff on the spot, so.
Counselor Johnson, I brought a copy of the email, the responses,
Okay.
so yes, we could go through and respond as we provided that information to you earlier today.
And I promise to stick to the script. Okay, I'll be bringing it up.
Boy Scouts honor.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and pull it out just
Okay.
real quick, and I'd like to try to keep it to 5 minutes. That'd be my preference.
All right, any more additions and/or deletions from the agenda? Then we will move on. Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue has a presentation for us tonight. It will be a PowerPoint. Some of you have that PowerPoint in the following section of Granicus. If you're following it there, for members of the audience, you can see it on both screens. And you got the word about she called it a clicker. Now, that's an old-fashioned term, but the remote
I knew
here.
exactly what she meant.
I would hope that the council president is not insinuating I'm old enough.
Hope I'm not in trouble for calling you old-fashioned there.
You know, clicker is what my dad said, just like he said wrestle and crick instead of creak and wrestle.
But
So,
he was correct.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
This-
So, Mike, introduce yourself for the record since it is being recorded.
All right. So this presentation isn't starting out well. We've been scolded already. So, for the record, my name is Mike Dyke. I'm the fire chief at Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. And thank you very much to the council for the opportunity to present to you tonight. This is, our periodic update to the council. I am making my way through all 11 cities, and so it's always a joy to be in front of you, though, and an opportunity to talk to you about some of the things going on with your fire department, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. So tonight, my plan is to cover some of our incident responses that have been going on specific to the city of Newburgh, update you on some of the district initiatives we have going on, and then what's in store. There's a number of other things that are in the works, and want to brief you on those quickly, and obviously answer any questions you might have. As far as incident responses, not a surprise to you, most of the responses are covered within the city of Newburgh by your fire stations, Station 20 and 21. In fact, for 2017 so far, 91% of those responses are covered by the home stations, which is a benchmark we shoot for. Response reliability is the national statistic that we track, and it's a standard that you always want to be above 90%, or you need to add more units to those stations to ensure that you're getting the quickest response possible. TVF&R this year so far, since January, has responded to almost 1,500 calls within the city. And then, no surprise, medical responses are the number one response type, and I'll get into a little bit more granularity next. Last year, just for comparison, 75% were medical responses versus this year so far. For the 2 quarters, it's 77%, so slightly higher. But really, until we get into the rest of the year, it's too early to tell. Some things tend to trend by seasons, believe it or not. As far as the actual statistics for, and this is looking at the first 6 months of 2017, you can see that medical calls again make up the majority. The 86% are dispatched as medical calls. District-wide for us across all 26 fire stations, that number trends around 68%. So Newburgh, I think probably because the demographic, a lot of an aging population, a number of other factors can cause that number to be slightly higher. But you can see it's up there with the majority of the responses. Fires do make up around that 10%, at least the way they're dispatched. And then depending on what we find, it can trend down from there. You can see in the fire breakdown just underneath the top table, there's a subcategory of the fires. Of the fires that were dispatched, 7 were structure fires in the first 6 months of the year. 17 were non-structure all 7 of the structure fires were residential, not commercial structures. So that means no businesses were involved, at least in the first 6 months, which is both good and bad. We'd like to see 0 with both, but it shows you what's going on there as far as fires. And then the bottom category in that lower table, the critical patients on the medical calls, we had 335 so far that required advanced interventions. So advanced life support, those are critical calls. The number of injury accidents, MVC is motor vehicle crash, both injury and non-injury, or unknown if injury crashes that we went to. Patient assist calls tend to be a larger number. In the bottom lower left, you can see which hours of the day are busiest within the city, and that number just tends to trend with, when folks are up and doing things that could cause them to call 911 versus being asleep at night. This community, the city tends to track pretty evenly across 7 days. I was in Durham a couple nights ago, and they had one day of the week that almost nothing happens. So it's just kind of interesting when you look at different communities how certain days of the week can be safer than other days. Again, if I was a statistician or somebody that wanted to dig into the numbers, that might be able to find something. And in the upper right, you can see that that's a heat map to show where the incident activity occurs. And there's just a lot of activity around Station 21. It's not to say that the other parts of the city aren't having calls. It just means the more incidents that happen in a specific area, you tend to see the hot spots. And that's a driver for where we place fire stations, how response times are affected, and long term, how we plan for. Do we replace a station where it's sitting? Do we move it to a different location? Because the community almost always evolves differently than maybe we originally planned it. These are all indicators that are good pieces of information for how we'd plan the future. And then go ahead.
So Station 21 appears just to be spot on in relationship to that. Is there more of one kind of call than another in that hotspot?
Yeah, so yes, there are. So, and this is where we could look at other, so this is geospatial data, meaning it's data that has a lat long attached to it, so an actual GPS coordinate. And we could dig in and we could look at incident location by call type, by time of day, day of week. And that's what causes that could cause us to do some very creative deployment schemes, like if Station 21 got really busy or busier than they could handle with the 2 units that respond out of there, but all the calls were clustered in a certain time of the day, we could add a peak staffing unit that was only in service for an 8 to 5 or 7 to 5 kind of a setting. And those types of deployment allow us to do that in a much more economically feasible fashion, and yet still get the total bang for the buck that you're looking for in your emergency response. So there's a lot of granularity there.
Council President.
Yes, sir.
I notice up by my neighborhood, we have a assisted living facility up there, and it does look like it's a little warmer up there.
Yeah.
It prompted a question for me. I know in other areas of your district, you use those smaller cars,
SUVs.
SUVs, the FJs, whatever. Any plans of bringing some of those to Newburgh for some of these medical calls, or do they usually result in like a transportation?
Well, not necessarily. So just because there is a transport component doesn't mean we wouldn't potentially do that. And we've actually, we're starting to get enough data to start to do some pretty good analysis. So that's a constant process for us. And we're having some longer term planning across our entire district, and we're doing that for Newburgh also. That if we were to add units in the future, where would we add them? What would they be? And it isn't necessarily every time we add. It's not just another fire engine or another ladder truck. It could be another medic unit. It could be an SUV. We've entertained a lot of different options, and we really want to make sure that the solution that we come up with fits the community. So that's why in some fire stations you'll see an engine company and an SUV. Others it's a medic and an engine. Some it's just an engine. Some it's just a truck. Some it's just a medic. It's really based on the data and the risk. So, and then just lastly in the lower left, most of the calls, as I stated, were handled by 20 and 21. Station 35, the King City Fire Station, has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week medic unit, and they roll into town every time there's a shortage or both medic units are tied up to ensure we always have coverage available for the city. So they end up driving back and forth on 99 a fair amount to make sure that we're always available, and it's a short response time when they're called. We did, and I know I reported on this last time, but we've been very pleased with increases in staffing. The apparatus that are placed here in Newburgh, three of the four, actually 4 of the 5 you see in the picture were from the fleet from TVF&R. Engine 21 is an existing Newburgh unit. We've received a few questions on what happened to all that other apparatus. Those have been maintained, or maintenance was done to them, and they're sitting in either reserve status or out at our fleet maintenance facility, really trying to see what the outcome of our contract phase is. And we were able to add significant staffing and obviously made some capital upgrades to the fire stations in town. So since June 1st, when we upstaffed both Station 20 and 21 to constant staffing of 4 on the engine or the truck and 2 on the medic, and then the battalion chief that's stationed here on a 24-hour basis, we've seen some great outcomes. It's making a significant difference in the incident responses. They're able to handle the incidents with a single company in some cases because there's more bodies on scene. Or when we have significant incidents, they're able to get a lot done really fast, which is always the outcome we're looking for. Fast and effective response is something that our community's always told us they want, and it's what we're able to achieve with the staffing. And the folks you see in the picture right there, that is the number of people on duty in Newburgh every day, 365 days a year. So I should say, in addition to that, we also constantly move other staff from other stations in the fire district to make sure that we always ensure we have great coverage. We also, this year, we embarked on, because of the sheer number of medical calls that we respond to, and making sure that our firefighters are available to do work that firefighters need to do, and potentially have other medical personnel to deal with some of the large quantity of medical responses. We hired just their paramedics. They aren't necessarily trained to be firefighter paramedics. They are trained to do a certain level of firefighter training, but we're going to have these staff strategically placed around the fire district to augment the responses. They will assist on fires. They won't put on the turnouts and the SCBAs and necessarily go into fires, but they'll definitely do exterior work. They're going to be there for medical standby, and it just adds to our standing army that's available to handle calls, and lets us do that in a more economical fashion than traditionally where we've trained everyone to be a firefighter paramedic or something in the firefighting realm. We were very pleased to be the first in the country to roll out, in addition to our Heart Start program, Pulse Point. Heart Start is the defibrillator I'm looking at. The Pulse Point program, where that's a citizen-based smartphone app that allows citizens that want to opt into the app and respond to cardiac arrest events in public spaces, not in private spaces, but public spaces. Because of our relationship with Pulse Point, they wanted to try having a pro version of that for off-duty firefighters and off-duty EMTs and others in the community that have a higher level of training and maybe some street experience that can respond into a residential setting. So we are doing a trial and have been since Valentine's Day, the Pulse Point Pro version, which is called Verified Responder. The AED you see our firefighter holding there, those were issued to all of our firefighters that are in the program through a grant, and they take those home with them, and they have their smartphone, and they are being activated into their neighborhoods 24 hours a day on their days off. And we've already had a number of saves as a result of this program and a number of activations. After we get through the trial phase, we see this getting rolled out farther and more widespread. It would include other firefighters from other departments, off-duty police officers, nurses, doctors, really other folks that have a higher level of training that we're comfortable to have them respond into a residential setting. And we would control who's on that list, and they would go through our vetting process to make sure that we're never putting anyone in the community at risk, and we would manage that program. But it's exciting. That's really going to make a huge difference when it comes to saving lives. And we're just truly honored to be the test pilot for the nation for this program. This is a snapshot of all the folks that have opted into the Pulse Point program. The general public is the yellow, and the red is the verified responders. And so just in our trial phase, it will obviously get a lot more red once we turn on the other verified responders. And then we always continually ask members of the public that if you want to download the app and you want to learn how to do hands-only CPR, which is very simple, we'd love for you to be a part of our team responding into the community and helping to save lives. We know it works, and we know it's going to make a huge difference.
You've done 2 of those classes in Newburgh already?
We do actually a lot more than 2. I mean, we're doing them constantly.
Okay.
I mean, every community event we get a chance, we usually have mannequins available. We're in the junior high schools and high schools. It actually became, through some legislation we helped pass a few years ago, hands-only CPR training became a graduation requirement in all Oregon schools. So, and that's really good for all of us that are getting older and might need the assistance of a young person to save our lives at some point. But we hope every year in Oregon, 50,000 students graduate from high school, so 50,000 people learn, at a minimum, learn hands-only CPR, and over time we hope to have everyone in Oregon know how to do hands-only CPR.
Wonderful.
FireMed is a program I'm sure you've heard about before, but FireMed's a subscription program that's been very popular in town. We picked up that torch from the Newburgh Fire Department and continue to honor it. In fact, September 1st was the opening of the sign-up period again. And the nice thing about that is not only are you covered if you're a subscriber, which if you do need ambulance transport by Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, that is the costs are offset because of that subscription. But if you travel to other FireMed areas in Oregon, they will honor our subscription and vice versa. So it's a great program, and I know it's very popular in town and something that folks look forward to. But just to let you know, we're still, this is our second year, I think, of running that program for the city. Want to remind everybody, and last time I was here, I talked about becoming a firefighter or a volunteer firefighter. For folks that are interested, or if you or other folks that you know of might be interested in looking at TVF&R as a career, as a career staff or a volunteer, we're having a career day on October 14th out at our training center in Sherwood. That'll be an opportunity for folks to put on some turnouts and squirt some water and see what firefighters do, and maybe get their hands on some of the equipment and see if it's something that they're interested in. We have continuous recruitment and continuous testing going on in our recruitment process. We've actually switched to continuous testing and recruitment for volunteers now. So if anyone's interested in being a volunteer firefighter, they can just go on our website and fill out an application. And once we get a sufficient number of folks, around a dozen or more, we'll run them through our vetting process and start their training. So we're hoping that that's able to correct some of the deficiencies as far as the numbers of volunteers we have available to respond, and maybe get a much larger mass that we can use to help us respond across our fire district. And the career day is something that we're looking forward to that's going to help us get some more potential candidates to join our team.
Mr. Resson. Scott, do you have your light is on. Do you have a question? Sorry. All right. Go ahead, Mike.
And lastly, just wanted to talk about a couple things on the horizon. So we're obviously working very closely with the city on the community outreach for the November election. And so staff has been great interacting with our staff and talking about the messaging and the information we're trying to get in the hands of the community. We want to remind everybody we're doing the annual Toy and Joy benefit fundraiser at the Chehalem Glen Golf Course on September 10th. So if you're looking to have a little fun on that Sunday for a good cause, I'd love to see all of you out there. And we're also working on planning phases for Toy and Joy and the holiday lighting and the traditional events here in town. TVF&R has a capital bond program, and our CFO recently went through a process to refinance some of those bonds that were sold, and we were pleased to hear that because of our AAA rating and the market, favorable market, we're going to save $1 million in the financing. So that's great for the citizens as far as being able to pay off those bonds much faster than we'd hoped and get that done. Lots of capital improvements and apparatus purchases to make sure the fleet is in tip-top shape. We are relocating our logistics facility and our occupational health and wellness center more central to the fire district to allow us to, again, maintain all the fire stations in the fleet more efficiently. And it's a fortunate piece where the old facility, one of our partners wants to purchase it, which causes us to be able to do that at a much reduced rate, cost. So that was a great opportunity for us. There's a lot of upgrades, and I know the city's involved in the WACA upgrades as far as the radio system and many other things that are going to make the 911 system and the radio communication system much more favorable and efficient. I'll mention here there's some national things going on as far as emergency communications and data. FirstNet, and I don't know if you've heard much about that, but it's a public safety broadband network. I actually chaired the committee here in the state of Oregon that is vetting the proposal for the state of Oregon, and it looks like a great opportunity that I'll be shepherding through the governor's office soon to potentially stand up a great network that's public safety grade and gives public safety, police, fire, and all the cogs in the public safety wheel priority access to broadband data so we can be, again, more efficient on emergencies. And then lastly, we're in our update of our strategic plan process, and we'll be reaching out to the city for input and how you're feeling about how we're doing and what you think we should be focused on. And we do a 2-year strategic plan, and so we'll be reaching out to ask some questions in the near future, probably leading into this fall. So with that, I'm taking a lot of your time, but happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Questions for Mike? Joe, do you have some information that you'd like to add or anything here? Joe, the mayor, and I will be together on Monday the 28th with the board members from TVF&R. We'll be meeting here at Station 20 as we're shepherding the process through here and different things. Mike, I'm glad you're a Newburgh guy, because whether it's been in the broader sense of the district or even at the state level or whatever, glad to call you a son of Newburgh. And here, does your compatriot that you brought with you have anything additional to add to the conversation tonight?
No, I appreciate all the dialogue, and this has been a good process for us. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for the city. It's a big deal for the fire district. It's been great working with staff. These are complex issues. It's been truly an honor to serve the city. You have fantastic staff. I have really enjoyed working with all of them as part of the TVF&R team, and they're doing great work. I will mention there's several Newburgh Fire Department employees, now TVF&R employees, that have been active across Oregon in the wildfires. Your fire chief, Les Hallman, is the incident commander in Sisters for that massive wildfire that they were very worried about in the city. And also several of the staff are still providing emergency response and structure protection down in Brookings, which is a very concerning fire in Southern Oregon right now. So we're actually in constant contact with the state on sending additional task forces. In fact, I fully expect we're going to get another call in the next 24 hours to send more resources to Southern Oregon because the winds are picking up and the temperatures are supposed to skyrocket this weekend. And that fire is, last I heard, completely uncontained and headed towards town. So, just top caliber staff from Newburgh that are doing a fantastic job and not only making, I'm sure, the city proud, but they're making TVF&R proud in the work they're doing across the state.
Yes. Mr. Essen?
Yes, Mike, could you give us, I don't suppose it'd be too far out of line to ask, could you give us a little bit of your background as where you've been and how you got here?
Yeah, I started as a firefighter in North Plains for Washington County Fire District 2. My father was a fire chief, so I started responding to calls when I was 6 months old as an unrestrained infant in the back seat of a Code 3 vehicle. And it didn't affect me at all. I love the fire. I grew up in the fire service. I love the fire service, and so when I graduated high school, I just really wanted to be a firefighter. Started going to school, taking tests, as all firefighters end up doing, volunteering. I got married, and my wife worked in McMinnville, and I at the time was working in Lake Oswego, and we decided to make Newburgh our home. And so our first home was on Main Street between 2nd and 3rd, and we lived here for 7 years. I joined the volunteer fire department and back when Elmer Christensen was the chief, and then went through Chief Sherman and until I ended up moving into the Beaverton area. I went to work for Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. Actually started with them in the 80s, late 80s during the merger of TVF&R. Went through the ranks up through, left Lake Oswego, came over to TVF&R as a firefighter, went through all the ranks, and when Chief Jeff Johnson decided to retire, I was his executive officer, and the opportunity presented itself for me to be the fire chief. That this September will be 8 years ago. So it's been a fantastic profession. I feel so fortunate to have lived in communities like Newburgh and but a part of the history here and just the fire service. Firefighters are firefighters no matter where you go. They just want to do a great job for their community and help make a difference. And I feel that that's where we are right now, working alongside of great firefighters from Newburgh, many of which I've known and started with as a volunteer here and are still employed and working alongside of with the fire district. So, thank you.
Thank you for drawing our attention to Les and others. I know that many of us pray for Les as he's responsible for that command. It's a great relationship that he enjoys with the governor, and he seems to be a great resource for the state of Oregon. So we're very, very proud of him as well.
Yeah, I did tell him. I talked to him just before I came down for the meeting, and he said he wished he could be here, but he's a little busy right now. But he wanted to send his best. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions? If not, then for council business items, anything that you would like to bring up for council business, or any reports that you would like to make at the 6 o'clock hour rather than the 7 o'clock hour? Joe Hannon.
Would you like me to do my update, and then you're done with that?
We'll do your update, and then Sue, you also had you were waving your hand as well. So let's do Joe's update.
So, Mayor and Council, Joe Hannon, your city manager, just real quick, and I've emailed this and earlier. Matthew, I don't know, I didn't look to see if you're on the email list yet for that. Got it, super. So just a summary, one of the last 2 weeks I was gone. I was in Washington, D.C., so it's a little bit shorter. No, it doesn't seem that way. While I was gone, the mayor and Doug Rux attended a successful ribbon cutting at St. Corsair, which was a big deal about bringing this international business. They're the folks who purchased a Barry Noir, and for the future, it's a tremendous opportunity. So Doug and Oregon Business and the governor's office worked for a long time, and the county worked through the issues of St. Corsair, because they're not inside our city limits, they're just outside, but of working through all the DEQ issues and getting them so that this large Japanese corporation could come in, take over, and expand. They're a great company. They have a strong and very vibrant history in Japan itself, and they sell a lot of high-end products to, like, Crate and Barrel, for example. But here they have visions. They're starting slowly. They've hired all the same people on. They've put some money into it, and they have visions of everything from fruit stand out in front to a vineyard to taking their product, and particularly our berries that are from this area, and selling them nationwide and then back into Japan. So big deal. And then with the help of the governor, they also received a grant from the Oregon Strategic Reserve Fund for about $100,000 to help in their expansion. The first of our big streets, and later on if you want, Karin can explain more of it, but the first of our street reconstruction as part of TUF funding is going on right now. Right in front of Edwards Elementary. It's to be completed in the second week of school by the 14th, but this has a lot to replacing some lines in the street and then putting on a new surface for the road. And if you were out there, this was one of our number one targets where the road had actually been disintegrating. So we're very pleased with that. And then there's a lot of, and it's on the website, and anyone can look up their street, also has about slurry sealing and crack sealing. Later in the next council meeting, you hear about we want to do some expanded, particularly crack sealing for this year. Also work with Public Works on the Villa Road project, and is in addition to that of working, we have the skeleton and two vice chairs that have agreed to be part of a tree committee that will come back and talk to council next meeting about where that fits in with priorities and how that matches what just happened in Villa. And this is so that the next meeting you'll see a potential work outline and how we can get residents working on some tree issues, from tree ordinances to potential canopy, inventory of all our trees, to other kinds of just mitigation and enhancement projects. Also attended along with Councilor Essen and the mayor, Yamhill County Transportation Master Plan meeting, and that's us just coordinating really what happens to transit throughout the county. And of course there's two places in the county that have fixed routes, us and McMinnville. So it's revisiting those, looking at survey results from riders and coming back with a strategy for doing that. And there's some additional money that's coming to the county because of the transportation bill. So, we're getting money for roads, but there is also a set aside for transit that will be able to access and take advantage of on the county. Have also the building permit submitted, so it starts that process for Chehalem Point. That's the apartment complex that's being proposed on Villa for 140 units. Also attended the City Club Board, so I'm doing the program chair for that this year, taking Jessica's place. When we sent her away to Washington County, I agreed to step in there and try to bring other issues for all of us to discuss at the City Club. Mayor's Cabinet happened this week, Downtown Coalition Board. Doug continues to shepherd through our economic development strategy group that has the chamber, it has the downtown business, the downtown coalition. It's one of our many master plans we have, and you've seen some of the updates, and you'll see much more very soon. And then, like Chief Dyke was mentioning, we met this week with WACA, with the Washington County Consolidated Communication Agency. And this is about where antenna and communication systems will go as part of our upgrade to stay in the same kind of bandwidth that we're using, which is different than Yamhill County. So we have a little bit more of the briefing. This is going to be covered in detail, the money side of that on the first meeting in September. But what we were meeting this time is actually going over contracts for where the antenna will go, what it looks like, what it covers, and then doing a pre-application meeting like any development would, where community development took the proposal, looked at it, and said, well, here are all the things that need to be resolved before a site can be finalized and then actually brought to the council. We continue the conversations with the Sportsman Air Park owner. The FAA has received, this is the second round of question and answers between the two. I think we have one more conference call with them, and then we'll be prepared to come back to council to talk about a proposal to submit a grant for the purchase of development rights on the airport. We've agreed to participate in the Church of Latter-day Saints doing an emergency preparedness seminar community-wide in another month. It's actually October 21st. And we have the first two churches now that have agreed to be pilots as part of our disaster response. So I have to work with Truman to get a memorandum of understanding, bring it back to the council. But the two churches, the Seventh-day Adventists and Newburgh Christian, both have at least 20 people that are actively working on emergency preparedness and response. And that's the last 2 weeks.
Will you speak to the 19-lot subdivision, Hazelwood Farm, please?
Oh, sure. And probably the best person, since he's here, is Mr. Doug.
Doug Rucks, Community Development Director. So we had an application in for what's actually called Hazelwood Farms. It's the Gale property next to Tom Gale Park, just to the east. It's in the Northwest Newburgh specific plan area, so there already been some preset about how many lots that they could have there. We issued the subdivision decision. The appeal period ends on that Monday at 4:30. We have met with one of the property owners who had some questions about some of the infrastructure and an existing easement. Karen and I were able to answer all of those questions, I believe, to his satisfaction. So right now we'll just wait for the appeal period to end.
That's been through Planning Commission already?
It did not require to go to Planning Commission. It was a director's decision.
Questions from council for Joe? All right. Let me bring this back up again. And Sue, you have something you wanted to bring to our attention?
Just a reminder about League of Oregon Cities Conference. So far I have Bob, Denise, Scott, and Steven signed up. If you're going to go and want a motel room, You have to decide by Monday because the group rate for the conference ends on Monday night. So either call Don Karen or myself or email us and let us know. So again, I've got Bob, Denise, Scott, and Stephen going from council, and I have Joe and Truman signed up from staff.
Okay, so any other council member, give that some thought. Make sure you get to Sue by Monday AM, and we'll be
You
able to
can
do
you
that.
can register for the conference up until the day of.
Yes.
It's just that the group rate for the motel rooms will expire
Okay.
because they reserve a block for so long.
All right, before a motion to adjourn, any other comments? I want to thank the staff for coffee, tea, and cocoa now, right there. It's very nice. Thank you. Mr. Essen?
Well, I just can't let it go with that short, thank you. That was a lot of work on your part, and I really appreciate it. It's really nice to have the drinks and the nice, to be able to get recharged as we go through this, as we have these later and later meetings. So I really appreciate it, and one thing, double thank you.
Mr. Dyke, will you come, or Chief Dyke, will you come back to the table, please? I have one more question for you. We want to thank the council for your cooperation on the postponement of this meeting to today from nobody knew exactly what was going to happen on Monday. How many of you were able to get away to view the eclipse? Very, very, very sensational. For us, we were out at the coast and saw a total eclipse. And so we appreciate everybody's cooperation with that. Chief Dyke, you have two, correct me if I'm wrong, you have two dedicated light wires into the city, or in other words, the, what do they call that infrastructure? Fiber optics that's down into here. I was made aware of that when we met with you guys in what was that, Tigard the other day, or whatever. Explain to us, and you did that at your own expense, or explain to us how that is such an important augmentation to our community.
So fiber optic cable, and fiber is commonly how it's referred to. That's the I don't know if you'd call it the gold standard, but that's how broadband connection is really made nowadays. Twisted copper isn't used as much. Microwave connection isn't as prevalent, other than in the very rural areas. A lot of times, cell towers, when they're erected nowadays, they have fiber connected to the base of them, so you can have high-speed connection to high-speed wireless. TVF&R relies on a very robust connection to all 26 of our fire stations, and we maximize that connection through fiber. So we connect fiber to all of our facilities. So not only when our crews are dispatched, they're dispatched over an IP-based tap-out system. We found that the fiber connection causes there to be nearly a non-measurable delay between the time the dispatcher pushes the tap-out button and the actual bells ringing at the fire station. We also lean heavily on that to push our data to our apparatus, do updates, monitor our apparatus, push map layers and pre-plans of facilities, and a lot of things go through a secure network, again, because we have those fiber connections. When I was made aware of some of the challenges that the city has in trying to connect to some fiber networks and the lack of some of those connections, I'm not the IT department, and I prefaced it where I may be getting over my skis, but to where TVF&R can be a good partner and offer up our fiber connections, which we paid to extend. I think they were just outside Sherwood. We paid to have those stretched down into the city. When we started our contract, we'd be happy to share those with the city for their connections back into the rest of the networks that they need to get access to. So I don't know where that is in the process. I think the city was going to get in touch with their IT department, with our IT department, and see if we can leverage what we've already purchased to help make that possible.
Thank you for answering the question. I don't think the council or sometimes the general public is aware of that important hookup, that linkage in terms of to enhance our communications. Matt, you have a question for Chief Dyke?
I do. Hello. So we don't currently have a direct connection fiber to Newburgh. Is that correct?
I defer to the city manager.
Okay.
It's something that right now there's a lot of processes happening all over the region where fiber being stretched around the state and the country it's a significant venture, if you will. There's a lot of those projects going on. It just in the timeliness of what the city was interested in doing, if we can leverage what we've already done, because I don't believe that we're utilizing the connection to its capacity. I believe there's still a sufficient amount of capacity that can help the city, and to that extent, we were more than happy to allow the city as a partner just to use it. So,
Thanks for answering the question. Any other further questions? Chair will entertain a motion to
Councilor
adjourn.
McKinney,
Yes.
could I just give one piece of information that's related to the fire annexation?
Yes, sir.
So the council approved the ballot titles for both the annexation measure and the charter amendment measure. Those were officially filed with our local election official on the 17th. There is a challenge period under the statutes. That challenge period ends at the close of business on the 28th, so Monday. We've not seen any indication of a challenge at this point. If there's no challenge, then the next step is we file those measures with the county elections official, and then we're done for a while from the city's end as far as filing election things. If there is a challenge and it comes in before Monday, then there'll be a rush to get into court to have a hearing on that, and that would happen presumably within a week. So that's the update on the status of the ballot measures.
Is there a possibility with the challenge that it would delay the vote?
It shouldn't. There's a statutory priority for courts to address these because of the short timeline. The drop dead date was September 7th, so we have to have it filed with the county by that date. So I would presume that we could get a decision from the court within that time period, if there were a challenge. And so far, we've not seen any indication that that's the case.
Questions for Truman Stone? I see her. Sue, Ryan.
I just wanted to let you know the microphones are more sensitive tonight because we worked with IT to try and bring the volume up for the room. And I understand from Dave Adams at KYLC there's a little feedback problem. I can't adjust anything now that they've said it because it's our new system, but I've put in a work order for them to talk to one another and figure it out. But the problem we were getting was we had a lot of people that were really loud and then a lot of people that were really soft, and it was creating problems not only for the transcriptionist but for the public when they would listen to the audio on the website. So we tinkered with it today and amplified it a little bit. You just need to make sure your microphone is pointed toward you, but you don't necessarily need to drag it as close as you did in the past. As you may note, some of these are longer than others, and that was part of the problem. So if you're getting a little feedback, just back away a little bit more, and we'll be fine. And so I put in a work order to IT, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilors, I only heard it during Manager Hannon's report. Is that the only time that you heard the feedback? So right now it's just on yours down there. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn till 7:15.
We don't need a motion.
All right, we are adjourned until 7:15.
You don't have a black hood to go with it? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call to order the Newburgh City Council business session for August 24, 2017. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Mayor, all present duly noted.
Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. After long and due deliberations and patience on the part of the council, we are now prepared to have a oath of office for our new council member. So, Mr. Murray, if you would join myself up here at the flag, please. And you don't need to move it.
Okay.
Go ahead, just step to the other side of it. And Judge Terry Marr will issue the oath of office.
Yes, Larry, it's my pleasure to issue you, give you the oath of office. Will you raise your right hand? I, say your name.
I, Matthew Murray,
Do solemnly swear that
do solemnly swear that
I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States.
I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States.
I will support the Constitution and the laws of the state of Oregon.
I will support the Constitution and the laws of the state of Oregon.
I will support the charter and the ordinances of the city of Newburgh.
I will support the charter
The charter and ordinances of the city of Newburgh.
charter and the ordinance of the city of Newburgh.
And I will, to the best of my ability, faithfully perform the duties of a council member of the city of Newburgh.
And I will faithfully do the best of my ability to support these councils.
Support the duties of the city council member of the city of Newburgh.
Support the city council of the city of Newburgh.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. I've read this more than you.
And we are going to be at recess for a moment while the documents get notarized.
Did you have a lot of people over there?
Yeah, the stadium was filled. They had probably 10 rows of chairs on the football field. They were all loaded. Well, it's parents and kids.
Yeah. Even at lunchtime, meeting parents to get going over to the Black Bear and different things. They're second largest enrollment of freshmen.
Well, they don't know what the total is yet. We'll know next week.
That's good news. Good news. As far as I know, there's no public comments. Is that correct?
Thank you, Judge Marr. Appreciate your being here.
Quite welcome, Mr. Mayor.
And you're welcome to stay.
Thank you.
It'll be about 11:30, 11:45.
Okay, I can stay for 2 minutes or so.
Oh, okay. I have nobody signed up for public comments, so we will open and close the public comment period. And we will go to the consent calendar. And at the request of Councilor Johnson, item Roman numeral 7B, a resolution approving a system development charge agreement is being pulled, and we will take that up following new business under item number 11, Roman numeral 11. We'll do that following the Economic Development Strategy Review.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, or point of clarification. I'm not sure what point I want to make, but I want to make a point.
Do you want this pulled or not?
I'm going to leave that up to you. If you think the
Well,
agenda is
that's
pretty
what
tight.
that's what I was advised. You would want it pulled and
Okay.
discussed later on.
Oh, okay.
So we're good. We're pulling it, and we'll discuss that then.
Why don't we not pull it and we can just pass it? It was an informational email, that's all it was. So I don't want to take time away from the meeting to talk about something that we can just simply pass and send out the email.
You're the one that I got
Okay.
the word on. So
We'll
you
just
want
leave it
to-
on the consent agenda
you
if
want
that's all right
to-
with you, sir?
Well, what's the motion then?
I move to leave it on the consent agenda, sir.
Say again.
I move to leave resolution.
I haven't had. There was no motion to take it off. Are you moving to adopt the consent calendar as presented?
Yes.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar, items A, B, and C. Is there any further discussion? Were there were corrections on the minutes? So that is as corrected. All right, thank you. Is that fine with the second? Call for the question. All in favor of approving the consent calendar signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The consent calendar is approved. And it is a delight to say that that's 700. How about that? Isn't that great? Now, we move now to item number 8, and this is a public hearing. And it's actually, we didn't even open it. We extended it from the last time we carried it over. So with that, I'm going to open a legislative hearing to address an ordinance amending the Newburgh Development Code for land divisions. And I'm asking if there's any abstentions, conflict of interest, or objections to the jurisdiction from the council. None appearing. Staff, you're going to do it, are you, tonight?
I am.
All right, good. You get to do it now.
Thank you. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. My name is Cheryl Keynes with the Associate Planner with the Community Development Department. And so tonight I'm going to present some code amendments that are proposed for the Land Division chapter of the Newburgh Development Code. So right now the current regulations for land divisions they lack organization. There aren't clear approval criteria, and the requirements, some of them are outdated or they're repetitive of other standards in different chapters of the code. In February of 2016, the Newburgh Planning Commission adopted a resolution to update the land division standards. And so staff has presented the amendments that are before you tonight at 2 different workshops with the Planning Commission, both in January and June of 2017. And so the code that's before you tonight reflects changes that were recommended and discussions that were had during those workshops. The summary of the amendments include basically of 3 sections of the code. One is to replace the entire section of 15.235, which is the subdivision section of the code. Amend section 15.100, which is the process and procedures section, and then add 1 definition to subsection 1505.030. So summarizing the land division changes, 1 is the name change of the chapter. Right now it is titled Subdivisions, but it also covers both regulations for subdivisions and partitions, so we've changed it to be land divisions. The proposed code is based on the Oregon Model Code for small cities. And the existing code right now, it's pretty much There are many standards that are repetitive of other sections, and also there are not clear approval criteria. So in this proposed code, what we've done is to make clear and objective approval criteria for land divisions, and then eliminate a lot of the repetitive standards that are actually regulated by other chapters of the code. The section also has one process for both partitions and subdivisions, and the same submittal requirements for both of those. The only exception is the process for Type 3 subdivisions, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. One of the other changes to the land divisions chapter, I guess as an example of standards that are in the chapter right now that are actually covered by other chapters, include the requirement for a future streets plan. And not just the requirement for it, but the actual criteria and the standards that are related to how you develop and how you would approve such a future streets plan. And so with the new code, one, we're requiring a submittal of a future streets plan because that's needed to show connectivity and how the development will be accessed. But those, it's just a submittal item. There are no longer standards regarding future streets plans in the subdivision chapter because that's covered by the streets section and also the access section of the code. So that's just an example of some of the standards that we're cleaning up that are repetitive. So for Chapter 15.100, Process and Procedures, the main piece of that is that we're repealing subsection 15.100.040, which has to do with Type 3 subdivision review. And those requirements are being moved to the subdivision chapter 15.235, just so that way all the regulations regarding subdivisions are in the same chapter. You can find them really easily in the same place. And Type 3 subdivision review, we pretty much just kept the same language and the same exemptions, and those have to do with when a citizen or an applicant requests that a subdivision go through a Type 3 process. There's a mapped resource on the site. It's outside of the city limits or the UGB. What's proposed doesn't meet the 80% maximum density that would be allowed on the site, or if the street connectivity standards aren't being satisfied. And the final area that we're making changes is to the definition section, because currently when applicants turn in their final plat for review, we say that we cannot record the final plat until the public improvements are substantially complete. So there's been a question over the years, well, what does substantially complete mean? And we've now included that in the code, so we wanted to make sure it was clear for applicants so when they would know exactly when we would be able to sign off on the final plat. This does not mean that the applicant cannot bond for the improvements. That possibility is still in the code, and that's up to the city engineer. And it does also not prevent us from allowing model homes within subdivisions. Those were questions that came up during the workshop, and so we just wanted to clarify that does not prevent the city from allowing model homes or bonding for those improvements. So before I get to a recommendation, I just also want to mention that there were some written comments that were submitted today from Mr. Robert Soapy, and so I just wanted to go through those really quickly. So I want to thank him for pointing out a couple of things. First one is a question about, in the executive summary background, he said that there is a mention that Mylar plats are outdated and that we're no longer requiring them, but there is a mention of Mylar plats in the code. Well, there is still a requirement for a Mylar plat to be submitted, and that's what the city will sign, and then that goes to the county and gets recorded. What we did change was the requirement to submit a signed recorded copy of the Mylar plat. we no longer need the Mylar plat. We just would like a paper copy, and that gets kept in the file. So that's the part that got changed. So I wanted to clarify that.
Cheryl, can you tell me on what page that is?
He
Because
pointed,
I could not find his citations.
so it's in section 15.235.060A1 on page 18.
Well, I do not have a 25060 on a page 18. In mine.
So it's
235,
two,
060, paragraph A.
235-260.
it's page 15 of the actual exhibit, but it's page 18 of the packet. Yeah, so it's under, and yeah, he said 060A1, but it's actually 070A1, where it talks about one original and one identical.
No, I couldn't find it.
Did you find it yet? Or?
Page 18
Yes, page-
on the paper copy
So page 15 of the paper copy, I
does
think.
not have 15-235-060. 215-235-050 subdivision applications. And page 19 doesn't have anything.
So it's this one she's talking
Well, that's not what, okay, that's not 060.
Mr. Mayor,
It's
I
07.
mean,
It's
if I may
07.
for just a moment clarify, is that Mr. Suppi, when he submitted his material, he cited the wrong section of what we're
That
trying to
helps.
clarify.
Thank you. That
It's in
makes it pretty
070.
So 070A1
Follow on, Mr.
at
Mayor.
the bottom of the page.
Follow on.
Mylar is a old product name, I gathered from our conversations today up in Truman's office or whatever. Are Mylar copies still used, or has Mylar been substituted for something else?
Doug Rux again. I think Mr. Suppi said that Mylar was actually a product of DuPont, but what we get is basically, it's like a sepia version that's semi-transparent, that has the lettering, it has all the lots and all the dimensions and all the legal requirements that are on it. Mylar has generically been used in my practice for 30-plus years
Okay.
as representative of the medium that is used in order to record subdivisions and partitions.
Okay, so substantively, they're the same thing.
Yes.
And I can verify that based on my experience in public service.
Okay.
It's a generic.
Okay.
It may technically be, but generically it's used in that way. Number 2?
So number 2 is on page 7 of 34, and let's see what. So that would be page 4 of the paper copy. And so it's under section 15-100-030. So you'll see a lot of letters there, A through H, and then it continues on E, F, G. And so the E, F, and G that are there, those were cut and paste into this, and they should not be there. So that should be removed.
So the second E, F, and Gs are to be deleted.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then the final thing is on page 9, which is page 6 of the paper copy. He pointed out a typo under section 15-100-050 and that's towards the bottom of the page regarding subdivisions.
And I
And
found that one.
so then It is a typo. It says 15535030, and it should read 15235.030.
22 or 235?
235. So those are all of the typos.
That concludes your initial remark.
That
All right.
concludes.
Any questions or comments from the council? Councilor McKinney? Councilor Essen?
I asked Mr. Suppy to look at this because when I read it, I don't have the same acuity that he has for looking through these things. And I asked him when he sent me this email, I also sent it in, and then he submitted it. The reason I say all that is he said the main thing is it seems like at some point what we are now allowing to have happen is any citizen has 10 days or something like that in which to change a Type 2 subdivision into a Type 3 subdivision, and that's important because it then has to go before the Planning Commission. And he wanted to know if that's what was intended, and so I'm now asking that question.
Yes, that is what was intended, and it is currently in the code. Anyone, a citizen, can request that currently in the code.
So that is now clear. We don't have to guess about that. That's what we're doing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Follow on, Councilor McKinney.
So with this action we take tonight, this is a clarification of its intent, making sure that the actual words in the code measure up to intent, process, and everything else. This is that kind of clarification within the code.
The typos that I pointed out, yes.
Any other questions or comments? None appearing. We have an opportunity for citizens to provide testimony. We've discussed the written testimony. I have nobody signed up for provide any oral testimony, so I'm going to open and close the oral testimony. Are there any further communications that we've received?
No, sir, other than the one received from Mr. Suppy earlier today.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And that means I'm going to close all of the testimony section of the hearing and final comments and staff recommendation.
So staff recommends, is recommending Planning Commission's recommendation to adoption of City Council Ordinance 2017-2318, which recommends that the City Council adopt the proposed Development Code amendments regarding land divisions, and then I would point out as amended this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Councilor Johnson?
Are we ready for a motion?
No? I want to close the hearing. All right. I'm now going to close the hearing and we'll move into deliberations. Councilor Johnson.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2017-2813.
May I remind you that this is a first reading?
Sure.
It is an ordinance.
Okay.
Your motion will be?
To adopt the first reading, waive the second reading? You know what? I'm just going to shut up.
Keep going. Just keep working at it. Keep punching buttons.
Yeah, I'm a monkey over here hitting keys.
You want to waive the second reading?
Mr. Mayor, may I think this may clarify it. Given we have typically, the two-step process, first reading and second reading. With the clarifications that Cheryl brought forward tonight, what I would suggest to you is you do the first reading. We bring this back on September 5th for the second reading. That way we can clean up those modifications and you get a final version that has the correct pieces in it, rather than trying to do it subjectively. Oh, okay, we're going to take out this piece and that piece. It would make it cleaner.
All right. That is a worthy recommendation. So we will not waive the second reading? Is there a desire to waive the second reading? Councilor Corey?
No.
Thank you. Then we will have the second reading on our, oh my goodness, September 1st meeting, or first meeting in September.
September 5th.
Thank you. All right.
Do we still need a motion?
No?
Great.
9-5, am I correct? 9-5. Thank you. Then with that, then we move to,
Sorry.
okay. We move now to a resolution that's an ordinance. I still have resolution, but it's okay. An ordinance incorporating the 2014 Stormwater Master Plan into the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan and amending Section 1, Public Facilities and Services of the Comprehensive Plan. This is a legislative hearing, and I'm again calling for any abstentions, conflicts of interest, or objections to jurisdiction.
Just a
None
moment.
appearing. This is a first reading.
I'm looking for it. There isn't one? Sorry.
Am I in this conversation? Do I know what we're doing?
I'm following your lead.
There is no PowerPoint?
There is no PowerPoint.
Oh, all right. I was trying to figure out what we were talking about here. With that, then we will move into the staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doug Rux, Community Development Director. So I will start by entering the entire staff report and all of its exhibits and attachments into the record. And I have to announce that, yes, somehow my subconscious noted it on the very first line as a resolution, and it is actually an ordinance, but all the rest of the text in the body of the material says ordinance. So that part, at least I got right. So this is the 2014 Stormwater Master Plan. We had a 2001 Stormwater Master Plan in the Engineering Services Department, and fiscal year 2012-13 and 13-14 hired Brown and Caldwell to go through and update the Stormwater Master Plan. That plan was subsequently then brought forward to the council, and the council adopted the Stormwater Master Plan by resolution number 2014-3155 on July 7th of 2014. So that's the attachment 1 in your packet. What we're doing tonight is simply incorporating the Stormwater Master Plan into the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan. There are state land use requirements that when we do all of our infrastructure plans, is they have to be incorporated and are part of your comprehensive plan. So for you may remember is that when we did the transportation system plan, it was incorporated into the comprehensive plan. When we did the water master plan, it was incorporated into the comprehensive plan. What we found over the course of the last years when Karen and I were looking at this one is that step had not been taken in 2014. So we're correcting that oversight and getting it incorporated. So there are no changes proposed to any of the text, graphs, tables at all in the Stormwater Master Plan. It's the same plan that the council adopted in 2014. But what you do have in your Exhibit C, which would be on your paper copy, page 365, is a track changes version that shows the red, which is the new material that's being added into the comprehensive plan. So we did make one change under Public Facilities and Services under Policy 1B.
Page again?
Page 365 of the paper copy.
I'm there.
And so you'll see that it used to be called the Drainage Plan, so we corrected that so that it's the Stormwater Master Plan. If you go to the next page, under Section 2A, we added the word Stormwater because the title is Sewers and Water Policies. Then we added a new G and H which says stormwater systems should be designed to convey stormwater based on impervious area within the urban growth boundary to protect, maintain, and enhance the public health, safety, and general welfare. Remember, these are policies. And then the design of stormwater systems should provide for the drainage of surface water from development, minimize erosion, and reduce degradation of water quality due to sediments and pollutants in the stormwater runoff. And then we added an I, encourage new development to maximize infiltration of stormwater runoff when soil conditions allow. The reason that we put these specific policies in is that if you go into the municipal code under our stormwater and you look at our design and construction standards that have the implementing regulations for that, we wanted to make sure we had policies to implement those regulations. And then at the very end, on the next page, on page 368, you'll see that we added number 9, which is 2014 Stormwater Master Plan, so that's the incorporation. So in here, you also have all the findings, because there's a very long list of administrative rule provisions that you have to meet on your infrastructure master plans. We went through and analyzed each one of those and found that we would be in compliance with each of those administrative rule provisions. With that, I will end my presentation.
Questions or comments for the staff from the council? Councilor Essen?
As I understand it, we've already passed all this. Is that true? And now we're just putting it into our development plan, or our master.
The council in 2014 adopted the 2014 Stormwater Master Plan. We've been using that document and implementing it ever since. The step that had not occurred is the link between that plan and incorporating it into the comprehensive plan. This action tonight incorporates it into the comprehensive plan.
Follow on?
Follow on?
Well, I had to figure that out because I wanted to talk about what was in the plan, which says that we've got some stormwater that's 30 feet deep in the downtown, that if it plugs up the entire downtown. So I wanted to talk about, where is that in our priorities? But I don't have to do that. We've already got that all figured out. All we're doing is moving it into the comprehensive plan. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilor, what I would suggest, if you have specific questions about a project that's identified in the plan, is to have a conversation with the city engineer. She can walk you through the details, because the projects that are already in this adopted Stormwater Master Plan get incorporated into the 5-year capital improvement program that is ministered out of the city engineer's office.
Other questions or comments for staff at this time? Councilor Johnson?
I'm just going to make an editorial comment. I, along with Councilor Essen, was a little confused, and that's partly on me. I probably should have called staff and said, help, because I read the bulk of this, not realizing that we weren't talking about the plan, but that we were putting into the code. Now that you said it, and I looked at the ordinance title, and so a lot of my questions I sent in were about the plan, because that was passed before I got on council, so I haven't seen it before. So, maybe in the future, if you guys could help me out and just say, hey, Pat, this is a plan you haven't seen before. We're just doing this to it. We're not changing the plan. That would be a huge help to me, and I'd really appreciate it. And I just know that with some of the I know some of the other counselors were kind of confused by it, and so that would just be my request in the future, if possible.
Staff can do that.
Any other comments at this point? We are a legislative hearing, and at this time I would invite anybody that has any testimony, oral testimony that they want to provide. Nobody has signed up, so I'm going to open and close the oral testimony. Do we have any other written communications?
No, sir, I have not received any for this ordinance.
All right, I appreciate that. So at this point, I'm going to close the public testimony portion of the hearing, and I'm asking for staff's final comments and recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, Doug Rux, Community Development Director again. So staff's recommendation is to adopt ordinance number 2017-2819, incorporating the 2014 Stormwater Master Plan into the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan and amending Section L, Public Facilities and Services of the comprehensive plan.
You heard the recommendation. Are there any further questions that you have? We will now move then into council deliberations. Pleasure of the council. Councilor Bacon?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we waive the second reading.
It has been moved that, whoops, I got to turn 2 pages too fast. It's been moved that we waive the second reading. It's been seconded by Councilor Corey. Is there any further discussion on the waiver? Question has been called for on the waiving of the second reading. I'm going to stop here for just a moment, if I may, before we do the vote. We have a policy in this particular case, Councilor Murray, where for ordinances, we, by our council rules, as you may have read, have a first and a second reading. But we also gave ourselves, if we're satisfied with the product, we gave ourselves the right of being able to waive by council action, waive that second reading. We could have done that earlier, but the recommendation, and a good recommendation for staff, was no, don't waive it. Let us come back with a clean product. We'll do the second reading, and then we'll move on as continue the public hearing as a second. It is a legislative hearing, so we don't have the nuances of a quasi-judicial. So we have now, and it's within our council rules. I just wanted you to know that. So if there's no further question, do we have a side discussion over here?
I was answering a procedural question from the city manager. Sorry.
Do you want to direct that through the chair, or do you want to do it on the side?
The question was just about continuing the hearing versus closing the testimony portion of the hearing. And so I told them that you've closed the testimony. The hearing itself continues to the next meeting for the second reading.
We're addressing a motion to waive the second reading.
Right, understood.
All right. The question has been called for. All in favor to waive the second reading of ordinance 2017-2819, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Second reading is waived. Pleasure of the council on ordinance 2017-2819. Councilor Bacon.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2017-2819 and read by title only.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2017-2819 and read by title only. Is there any further discussion?
Call for the question.
The question has been called for. This will be a roll call vote. City Attorney.
Ordinance number 2017-2819, an ordinance incorporating the 2014 Stormwater Master Plan into the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan and amending Section L, Public Facilities and Services of the Comprehensive Plan.
This is a roll call. City Recorder.
Councilor Essen?
Aye.
Councilor Bacon?
Yes.
Council President McKinney?
Yes.
Councilor Corey?
Yes.
Councilor Murray?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Andrews?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0-0. And we now move to continued business. And that will be an informational item dealing with Newburgh 2030 project, task force and population projections, and what will be the next steps. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to our Community Development Director, Mr.
What's his name?
Mr. Doug Rux. So,
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux, Community Development Director.
yeah,
You don't have to suspend.
So as you, 6 of you are aware, and Councilor Murray will be learning about, is that we've been involved in an urban growth boundary expansion process, and we've provided a number of briefings to the council as well as to the Planning Commission about where we're at in that process. So originally we had a kind of a first task, which was public outreach. and then to identify some draft comprehensive plan changes. That was task 1. We completed that. Task 2 and 3 were developing a buildable lands inventory and then establishing a study area boundary. This was all under the guise of using Chapter 660, Division 38, which is what they call the simplified, or kind of the generic name, the streamlined urban growth boundary process. We received a grant funds from Department of Land Conservation and Development to do this body of work. So the 4th task was basically we had to develop an action plan and strategies with all of the information that we had gathered and put together. So what this report is to give you an update of where we're at. So task 4 was submitted back on May 22nd. Remember, we did have an advisory group of members that reviewed all of this information before we ever submitted products back to DLCD. Just some of the highlights that are involved in this. So we talked about strategies to refresh and realign, and it says reinforce our economic development objectives. And in the report, identifies that there are several things that are kind of in process that could influence, to some degree, the urban growth boundary expansion analysis process. So one of those is the Riverfront Master Plan. So again, we've gotten a grant from the state Transportation Growth Management Program for that. We're working on a final statement of work. But that whole riverfront area is 450 acres. It includes residential. It has some zoned commercial. It has industrial and zoned industrial. And whatever that master plan may come up with, it may modify a little bit. We may have some mixed use down there. The mill site may stay predominantly industrial. We don't know. We'll work through a community vision and so forth. But that will affect our economy in the long term. We've gone through a series of economic vitality summits. We've done 2. A 3rd one is being tentatively scheduled for November of this year. And information there may influence some of our economic development objectives. We adopted the Newburgh Economic Development Strategy, and I'll give you a presentation on that after we complete this one. So we did that in April of 2016, and that will get refreshed every 3 years. And then we did the tourism plan as well. And the tourism plan and the economic strategy are dovetailed and linked together. But all of those documents could have an influence on this issue about our economic development objectives. The second one is actions and policies. And this one is really tailored more to, in the streamline rule, there's a Table 5. And Table 5 is efficiency measures. And there are 31 of them. Some are in a high category, some of them are in a low category. And so as we sat down and looked through that, we identified some efficiency measures that would apply both within our existing urban growth boundary, as well as any lands that may be added to the urban growth boundary in the future. So those include items such as accessory dwelling units. And of course, we're already having a lot of conversations about that as part of the affordable housing. Minimum density standards. You heard tonight, the 80%. We've had conversations with the Housing Newburgh group about minimum density standards to be able to use the land efficiently. We talked about single-family detached homes and medium density. We already allow that, so you can already have duplexes, you can have apartments, you could have row houses, you can have townhouses. Off-street parking is an issue that there are some efficiency measures associated with. We identified density bonuses, and so this is another piece that's kind of come out of the Housing Newburgh group, is could we have a program that might have some bonuses for densities from additional dwelling units per acre on a parcel of land that is being proposed for development. Single-family homes in high-density zoning districts. This is one we want to take a look at. So this is an efficiency measure that basically says if you have land that's zoned for high density, you don't allow single-family homes to be built on it. It's really intended for higher-density apartment-type units. And so ensuring that we'd have provisions that would prohibit that from occurring. The next one we identified is attached single-family residences with a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. Well, we already allow 5,000 square foot lots in our low-density residential. We allow 3,000 square feet in our medium density. Then another one was no maximum lot size for single-family detached dwellings in zoning districts that permit attached to multifamily dwelling units, something we would want to look at. And then there are other efficiency measures. And so essentially we kind of identified this group as highly possible to look at, or we've already got that might need a little bit of a tweak. But there are others on that list that we would definitely continue to take a look at. And they become policy choices. And so it's eventually or essentially the council would have to make those policy choices. We're not asking you to do it tonight. We were just kind of outlining what those possibilities might be in the future.
Clarification, if I may.
Yes.
On your single-family homes in a high-density area, and I'm trying to kind of follow along with you on the printout here. The policy that we would be looking at, if I read this correctly, is to consider not allowing single-family homes in high-density zoning districts.
Correct.
Then I do not understand the next statement, no conditional use permit required. What do you mean by that?
Which page are you on, Mayor?
Well, I'm on page 5 or 3, depending upon which it is. I'm on page 5, I guess, of attachment 1. It's attachment A. It's paragraph F.
I've got it. I found it. The intent there was, you could say you don't want single-family homes developed in high-density residential land, but someone could say, well, couldn't we do that as a conditional use? And essentially, this is kind of shorthand to say, no, not even with a conditional use permit.
So, no conditional use permit allowed then, rather than required?
Could say it that way.
I just wondered if that's what we, okay. Thank you.
The next one on the list is strategies to achieve community goals and objectives. This is kind of the future planning. So what we did here is when we did the community outreach, you may remember we did some focus groups, we did some survey work online, we had posters that were up around town at strategic locations where we were cataloging comments. And some of the strategies that we might want to consider as we move forward through an urban growth boundary expansion process is that topic of the missing middle housing. So if you had housing in your downtown and it's kind of higher density and you've got the single family that's out on the edge, is what about that medium density housing? What about the row houses, the townhouses, the cottages, the courtyard type of development? How could you incorporate those? How might you be able to incorporate duplexes and triplexes? So one school of thought is, well, could you have a duplex on a corner lot in low-density residential? Would that be okay? Or on other lots within low-density residential? Residential parking, and so that was a piece that came up from the community, because often the parking that's in front of the home is viewed as that's my private parking space, even though it's a public street, it's in a public easement, essentially. Nobody gets to claim that that's mine, but making sure that we have adequate parking for our residential development. And part of this plays into the accessory dwelling unit. Right now, to do an accessory dwelling unit in our R1 is you have to have a conditional use and you have to have one additional off-street parking space for that. So you have to have 2 for the house. For an ADU, you'd have to have 1 more. There was one of these efficiency measures that says if allow accessory dwelling units, don't require any additional parking, and don't charge SDCs. And then there's actually a Senate bill that was passed, Senate Bill 1051, that has a provision in it that says by July of 2018 is that you have to allow accessory dwelling units in your residential where there's an existing detached single-family home. It doesn't say allow, it doesn't define allow yet. That's something the city attorney and I are going to have to sit down and talk about. Building design, so this is multifamily. So we've heard some comments that come back because people are concerned they don't want the multifamily to be built and look like barracks. You know, it's rectilinear, it's got a roof on it, it's got a few punch windows, doesn't have balconies, it doesn't have some articulation in the walls. So how could we look at our design standards to make sure that our multifamily product is the best we can get by not impacting costs too much, but not having just a simple rectilinear building?
Councilor Bacon.
Are you going to be looking at the work done by the original Affordable Housing Ad Hoc Committee that addressed a lot of these things?
Yes, and that notebook is on my shelf, and I touch it on a regular basis.
Thank you.
So then, low-income housing was the term that the community was bringing up. We're really talking about housing affordability. That could range from Section 8, federally subsidized, to workforce housing, to housing that, you know, in that 30% of your cost, so you're not cost burdened. So, but how do we incorporate affordable housing within the community, and where does that occur? That's a much bigger question. Public resources is another piece that we heard, so that as the community continues to grow, we get more housing of a variety of types, is looking at the ability to provide the other services for that. So as I've noted in here, police, fire, and school were the three top ones that were brought up by community members. And then the accessory dwelling unit component of it. We also will need to look at infill and how do we deal with infill housing, and where should infill housing occur, both inside the UGB and or any lands that might be added to the urban growth boundary. Another piece that came out of the community is about the area between Newburgh and Dundee. Because we asked the question, should we plan for it? And then kind of open-ended and asked people what you would want to do. And so we've got a wide range. It goes from, yeah, you should develop it, but nobody really said how. Some said, well, maybe with industrial, some with housing. Some said, well, you should plan it for open space. Others, it should be park. So there's a big question that's still sitting out there that is a conversation that Newburgh and Dundee and Yamhill County need to have. Outdoor recreation is another piece, and so as the community continues to grow, even within our existing urban growth boundary, is how much additional park and open space land do we need? We know from the CPRD master plan, they identified that we were about 54 acres short of having parkland that we need for our existing urban growth boundary. So where might that occur? Now, that does not take into account yet what the Springbrook properties may develop in some of the parks and open spaces up there. And then the downtown improvement plan is, implementing that, because that also has a housing component of it, and trying to capture somewhere to 5 to 10% of the new houses or housing that would be built in the community and capturing those into the downtown area and going up. But then when you have that housing, then it helps support the businesses, trying to get to that model of having an 18-hour city. So you have residents who can go get their goods and services and their shopping. The last piece of this is dealing with options. So when I talked to you last time, I kind of shared with you some of the technical problems that we found with the Division 38. And we've shared that with Department of Land Conservation and Development, and sat down with them and told them, I said, well, basically I've got these 4 options that are available, and this chart's trying to explain that. So option 1, which would be on my left, is that you just proceed forward with the Division 38 process, even though that we know that there are some technical problems with it, and they need to be fixed. Option 2 is to have DLCD and LCDC go back and correct those technical problems in that administrative rule. And if they were to do that, then proceed forward with the Division 38 process. Option 3 would be stop doing the Division 38 process. Let some other comparable sized community in the state of Oregon go through this. We're the first one to try to use this new administrative rule. Let somebody else do it. Let them find the problems and try to work out what the solutions are. But as I've talked with DLCD staff, there is no other comparable sized community in the state of Oregon who's attempting to use the new Division 38 process.
Just us.
Just us right now. There was 2 communities in Marion County who started to use the process, and a communication I received from that community through Marion County is that they've stopped using the Division 38 process. The fourth option, which is the one that's on the far right under the orange, is to go back to the Division 24, the traditional method of going through an urban growth boundary expansion. That would be reconvening our Citizens Committee. Here, we brought this up before, is we would have, the first step would be preparing a new economic opportunities analysis and a housing needs assessment analysis. That takes about a year to go through that, and then you have to go through the appeal processes if they occur. And once you got that all resolved, then you could actually truly get into the meat and potatoes of the Division 24 process. So where we're at with that, and there's not a choice that you have to make tonight, this information to think about, is we had a work session and I presented with the buildable lands, and we talked about going to the state and asking them to do the technical fixes. So I talked with the state, I submitted a letter, made the request that they add it to their work program for their 17-19 biennium. Staff prepared a report, presented that to the Land Conservation and Development Commission with a recommendation to support and add it to the work program. There was support from commission members when they found out that there were these technical fix problems. LCDC will be meeting on September 22nd in La Grande, where they will take their final action on their work program for administrative rules for 17-19. So we're waiting right now for the commission to make their determination. The hope would be that they would say, yes, let's go back. I know Commissioner Morrow said, and she was the commissioner that was the rep on this particular state project, so they spent a lot of time and energy doing it, and she said if there are technical fixes we need to do, then we need to do that. Even Friends of Yamhill County, Mr. Friedman was there, and he even acknowledged that there are some technical fixes that need to be done to the administrative rule. The question then is, how quickly do they get?
Follow on.
I appreciate the steps forward to try and clarify some paths that will end up being usable for us. Are we inclined to face the same obstacles under the traditional urban growth boundary method as we experienced before?
Likely, yes, very likely.
Likelihood of that.
Very likely.
Right. So one of the 3 options where we're the only city here prepared to do that, you're going to suggest a more clarified path in the future?
Yeah. So yes, Counselor. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm waiting to see what the LCDC is going to do about this issue of technical fixes. Then there needs to be a conversation with DLCD staff. How quickly are you going to get to the technical fixes? Because at the same time as all of this, we just got a notification today is the next round of technical assistance grants are open, and they're due on October 13th. And of course, we wanted to apply for another grant in order to take the next step in the UGB process. So part of the question is, which path? And so Cheryl Keynes and I talked today about it. She will be talking with our DLCD rep while I'm out of the office and try to work through what path we may go down. Right now, I'm still focused on and hopeful that the Division 38 process will work for us if they can make the technical fixes that we've already identified. It would mean we have to go back and refresh our buildable lands inventory. As remember, shared with you, when we have properties that are fully developed, but based upon the county assessment data, is they don't have the improvement value, is it shows up that it's partially vacant land. So
Yes.
some of our retirement facilities, churches, manufactured home parks, and it skews the numbers about what we actually have that's available for residential land development. Have the same issue on our commercial and industrial land on the employment side. And DLCD staff is aware of it, and they acknowledge that, yeah, there's some things that need and should and can be clarified in that administrative rule. But they've got to have their commission give them direction to go do it.
I have one more question.
All along?
In terms of accessory dwelling units, is there discussion about 55 and older in these discussions because of mother-in-law apartments or retired, mothers and fathers that need to be kind of brought close to home? Is there any provisions or discussions about 55 and older provisions in these accessory dwelling units, or is that just something that hasn't hit the radar yet?
In all the conversations I've had while in Newburgh, age 55 and older has not come up.
Continue.
So the next piece is included in your packet, the Portland State University new population projections that came out at the end of June. So those are the population numbers that we now have to use. We're actually going to the Planning Commission to have them initiate a comp plan amendment to incorporate the new population numbers into our comp plan. And when you look at those numbers that are in that document, is you see that Newburgh is projected to continue to grow over the next 60 years. So where we're at today at 23,465, by the time we look out to 2035, we're a little over 34,000 projected. By the time you get out to 2067, we're a little over 52,000.
What are we today?
23,465.
23,465. That's for 2017 or
That's
2016?
2016. We'll get the 2017 number in November.
Okay.
So the community is identified to continue to grow. Actually, over the first 15-year period, they have a 1.9% annual average growth rate. When you get past 2035, it drops to about a 1.3, 1.4 average annual growth rate. But from a planner's perspective, you start to look at this and go, where are you going to put all the people? Because we've got this challenge that we have high-value farmland on many sides of the community. You have steep slopes to the north. You have landslide areas to the northeast. You have exceptional land to the west, kind of in that Newburgh-Dundee corridor that's highly parcelized, that residential developers find very challenging because you have to do land assemblage. And then you have to provide all the infrastructure, and you've got Chehalen Creek to cross. And so there's just a lot of things that we have to consider as we go through all of that. So I just wanted to provide you an update of where we're at, what those possible next steps are, as we look forward. What I would anticipate is that we'll be back in front of you in October, one of your meetings, to give you an update about where LCDC landed on taking up technical fixes to the administrative rule. And at least my staff...
May I interrupt? That is on their agenda for their September meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we actually got a letter of support from Marion County to go and do technical fixes as well. I talked with their economic development person.
Marion County is interested also now.
Well, because there were two smaller communities in Marion County who were trying to use Division 38.
Very good.
And then this other piece is that we have this potential grant opportunity. And of course, we'd have to come before you basically at your first meeting in October to get a resolution of support to be able to apply for a grant. So we're trying to figure out which of these paths of these four we might be able to go down.
Follow on?
Do we have letters of recommendation or letters of encouragement from Yamhill County Commissioners?
No.
Reasons? They've never been approached, or it just hasn't come up, or?
At this point, they really haven't been approached. We went through this first round of tasks, these first 4 tasks that are available that we went through. I know that the county commissioners are aware of the challenges that we found in doing our buildable lands inventory, because I've talked to them about that, but we haven't asked them for anything for support at this point in time, because right now, you as a body haven't provided policy direction because staff hasn't brought something forward to you officially to say, here's A, B, and C, and here's our recommendation. We're just still at the point of, here's A, B, C, and D, and we're not sure yet.
Yes, Councilor Murray?
So the funds from the grant, we need that to be able to continue the process.
It would be very helpful. We did in the budget for this year, the budget committee and the council did approve funds for us to take the next step forward through our UGB process. So we identified $150,000, and that was for the streamlined approach. Again, coming up with that number was some guessing and then using past experience because nobody's done it before. And so our consultant who helped us do the buildable lands, we sat down and tried to, okay, here's all these other steps we got to go through. What do we think it might cost to be able to do that? I also identified in the budget is that we wanted to apply for a grant, and so we might get a $50,000 grant from DLCD. I would probably ask for more than that, but I'm hoping we might be able to get at least that much.
Excellent, thank you.
Follow on?
Can you do it with the grant? Do you have to have the grant, or can we do it without the award of the grant?
We can continue forward without a grant.
Councilor Edson?
I'm thinking back. As I recall, that's one of the first things we addressed. We had sunk quite a bit of money into this, a lot of money into the consultants, and we were going back and forth with attorneys, and we were setting limits on how much more we wanted to spend on this, and this was being strung out by the opponents, and so we decided, well, we're going to bail on this. And we walked away from quite a bit of money doing that. But on the other hand, one of the things I thought was happening now is we also found out a lot of stuff that we needed to have in the plan. So now we've been assembling all that so that if we were to go forward again, what would happen is we'd have, for instance, the population studies or whatever it all takes to have in it all the different land to make sure that we met the criteria. And so we're going to be, I guess my question, so it's more of a question, I guess, at this point. So are we going to be prepared, more prepared than we were the last time, no matter which way we go?
Well, Counselor, I think I'd answer your question this way. The last attempt at doing an urban growth boundary expansion was focused specifically on industrial land. Did not look at commercial land, did not look at residential land. So part of that 5,000-page record on that is, comments came as, well, just take some of your residential land and convert that to industrial. Or take some of your commercial land and convert that to industrial. That way you don't need to do an urban growth boundary expansion. So it's like having a pie and you cut 1/3 of it and say, I want to focus just on this to the exclusion of the other 2/3. Here, when we started and embarked on this, when we talked with council, is that we would look at it holistically, at our residential, and our employment, which includes the commercial and industrial, to make a determination of what we need for additional land. Now, it's like going back even to what I started about some of these other economic things that we're looking at. So the riverfront, what is the community's vision of the riverfront going to end up being? That will play into a land supply issue for us over the long term. Industry likes to have the flat ground. And that flat ground that we have is high-value farmland. So much higher bar to overcome trying to bring that into an urban growth boundary rather than looking at exception land out on the west side, which is carved up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 acre parcels. It has a house sitting in the middle of it, which you could bring in. It's the first place you look to bring in an urban growth boundary, but industry doesn't want to go there. And you don't want to have industry on the west end of town that you push all the traffic back through the center of downtown again after we just fought for decades to get the bypass to get the truck traffic out of downtown. So there's all these different competing issues that are going on at the same time. But there is a cost to go through an urban growth boundary process. That's why they came up with the simplified method. I think it was supposed to be faster and less costly. Well, what we found to even get as far as we did, it was $30,000 of a grant. The consultant had to kick in some additional time because they didn't have the product done. We kicked in some savings we had on another project because I wanted to have the traditional Division 24 numbers run to see the difference between these two different methodologies. And then we had all of the staff time. So generically, I said, we're already into this with grant money, staff time, and so forth. We're in over $50,000 already. And we're early in the process. UGB expansion processes are not cheap.
Councilor Essen?
Follow on. So, this explains why you don't have an answer for us yet, because you don't know.
I do not have answers for you yet. I can share facts and data with you, which I've done in the briefings, but right now I'm not in a position to give you a recommendation of which way we should go. There's some other things I need to work on.
End of presentation?
End of presentation.
Very good. Any further comments or questions for staff at this point? Thank you, Doug. Gives us an idea of where we're not and where we need to begin to plan to be for tomorrow. So I appreciate it very much, you taking the time to do that.
You're welcome.
And with that, then we will move to new business. And this is just information only on the 2016 Newburgh Economic Development Strategy Review. And Mr. Rux, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux, Community Development Director again. So in April of 2016, City Council adopted by resolution the Newburgh Economic Development Strategy. That same month, it was also approved by the Chehalis Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Newburgh Downtown Coalition. So if you go back to your March 2016 council priorities, one of the things was to go back and look at all these long-range and master plans we have, come up with a schedule to be able to report to you the status of where we're at with those particular plans. So we shared with you when we were going through council priorities last March, so forth. We shared a draft of what that schedule would look like. So we are now in the process of starting to bring these plans forward to you. So you're going to, every month you're going to be seeing stuff, things you haven't seen before that I will make sure that we have conversations first. So if you may remember when we put together this strategy between 2015 and 2016, a variety of groups and organizations were involved. There were over 60. So the center of the circle is kind of the core. So we've got the city, Austin Industries, the chamber, finance community, developers, George Fox, and the Downtown Coalition. Then we got some peripheral pieces dealing with the utilities, property owners, and CPRD. Then you get to the white ring, which we collaborate and coordinate with on economic development activities. And so all of these acronyms all mean something. So OED's Oregon Employment Department, JASO's Japan American Society, Regional Solutions Team, SEDCOR, Small Business Business Oregon, the COG, DLCDA. They're all, I live in a world of acronyms.
Follow on.
Yes.
Follow on. Are you going to create a glossary of terms so that Matt won't get lost on
Well, I didn't put it in the slide, but on the back of this drawing, actually in the report, there is a glossary that spells.
On the back of this target?
Yeah, it's a 2-page. I just clipped
Yeah.
the front page to show you. But yes, there is a glossary that identifies each of the acronyms. And then the outside circle is groups and organizations that we would collaborate with on economic development, but not on a frequent basis. So there are 4 pillars that are in this plan. So the industrial sector, the commercial sector, business development and workforce development, and tourism and hospitality. There's a lot of information in the plan. So in industrial, there are 9 strategies and 68 actions. Commercial has 7 strategies and 41 actions. Business, workforce, 8 strategies, 80 actions. And tourism has 3 strategies and 24 actions. So we had to, what are we going to focus on in the first year? So the group sat down and said, okay, this is what we wanted to tackle. So there was basically the top 11. So under industrial, and I'll quickly go through this, but we identified these 4 strategies that we were going to focus on: diversify economy, retention, expansion, recruitment, and increase in the land supply. So then under each strategy, there were these list of actions. So these are things that we accomplished over the course of the last year. So we did some community assessment and needs assessments. SEDCOR, Strategic Economic Development Corporation, had started with us on a gap analysis. And that also tied into the 4 traded sector industries and the cluster piece. And I talked to Chad today about it. It's something we need to continue on with. Then we had the implementation of the vertical wine integration. So this is something that came out of the America's Best Community Program. So we're talking with wineries and vineyards, and we're talking about supply chain, having companies be here. A lot of conversations, if they make all the equipment in Europe, why can't they make the equipment here? Why can't we have a satellite operation that could serve the West Coast? Those kind of conversations. Then retention visits, did 40, this is for industrial, did 45 of those last year. So think of companies, ADEC, ARE, Harris Thermal, Action Equipment, Newburgh Steel, PPM Technologies, DCI, Hydrographics. So I touched those. Then we have greeters. The chamber has greeters, and there's 51 of those or 50 of those a year. They're not really attended very much by the industrial side, but between Joe and I, and Truman, we make 45 to 48 of those greeters, and so that's another way to have retention conversations. Coordinating recruitment activities, and so we do that. Primarily it's with Business Oregon and SEDCOR, to a lesser degree with Greater Portland, Inc. The 4 traded sector areas, that's a process that we're working on with SEDCOR based on a model that they've used for supply chain. We've had conversations with Cheryl Kelch at the Chamber about ways to engage Chamber members when we're doing recruitment. There are certain key times that a company may and should talk with local company businesses, and how do we put that together. Continue to have a lot of conversations with the industrial brokerage community that's not specifically in Newburgh, but is in the Portland area, from long-term relationships I've had with different individuals. And then identifying target companies, and then having recruitment face-to-face kind of discussions that could occur. So so the check marks are things that we completed over the first year. So we applied for the UGB grant. We got that. We updated our comp plan policies. They're in draft form. We've completed the buildable lands inventory, that first round, and we looked at expansion land opportunities, and we're continuing to have conversations with property owners outside the existing urban growth boundary who would like to be in the urban growth boundary. The second one is under the commercial. So again, we focused on 3 strategies and 11 actions here. So it's downtown revitalization, retaining existing businesses, and the supply of commercial and retail land. So the Butler property market analysis was identified. We completed that. We shared that with council. Council and commission went through the downtown plan. You ended up approving that. So those are the kind of check marks that were all included in the strategy. The Chamber and the Downtown Coalition are doing some survey work of existing businesses. We have our new permitting software, so our Track It, and that was one of the things identified as enhanced permitting.
Follow on. You mentioned some survey work, and I'm just curious, and I didn't see it in this report, and I was mostly just because I'm always curious. You mentioned retention visits. I would love to know how we're doing as far as being business friendly, as far as meeting those companies' needs from a transportation infrastructure, city services point of view.
I'll give you kind of some high-level feedback that I get. A lot of it is on workforce needs, and having qualified employees that are there. Interesting, a lot of the companies I've talked to is like nobody from the city has been out and talked to them in years. And so it's trying to rebuild relationships. And so there's, candidly, there's some a little hesitant. I'm here from the city. I'm here to help. I'm like, what, I haven't talked to you in 5 years. What are you here to help me with now? Kind of approach. We always hear about transportation as being able to get goods and services out of here into markets. Companies talk about bypass. When's the bypass going to be done? Is this going to solve the problem? No. It's a huge step forward, but it will not be the final answer.
Follow on. Do any of them mention housing for their employees as an issue?
Some do, especially when I share with them, and I've shared this with council, when you go back to the American Community Survey 2012 data, the most recent one I had access to, is, 60, for people age 16 and over, working age, 6,500 people get up every day and leave this community to go to work someplace else. 5,500 people commute into this city to go to work. There's a large segment of our working population that works in the service and retail sector. So they are at the lower end of the pay scale. And so as housing prices continue to increase, I saw a report, a week ago, the median household price in Newburgh was now $345,000. It takes a lot of wherewithal to be able to afford a home. And that's it. And part of this whole affordable, the housing Newburgh piece, and companies are there have talked about housing affordability across the entire spectrum as well. So we've had conversations about companies creating their own workforce housing somehow. We've talked with the school district. Could they build homes for teachers? An entry-level teacher makes $37,000 a year. They can't afford to live here. And even the school district says, well, their teachers don't live here. They commute from someplace else to come here to work. So how do you get them to be integrated with their students out of the school environment if they're not even here? So, yes. The Chamber and the Downtown Coalition have on their list and have started work. And remember, all of this was completed by the end of April, so we've had a few months. And other things we have. Talking to companies that are leaving. Again, there were elements in the plan that were talking about land supply, so you see the checks that are up there for grants and comp plan policies, buildable lands inventory, so we completed all of that. Then there's the workforce, and that's kind of the biggest push because there are 80 actions under the workforce piece of it. So a lot of the successes over the first year were addressing these strategies of the accelerator, expanding workforce, and establishing a business resource center. So first slide, all the achievements that have been related to establishment of the accelerator. So that is up and operational. It has tenants within the facility. It's moving forward. They were gracious enough to invite me to be an ex officio member on the board, so I get to stay directly involved. The We've had various meetings with businesses and education about workforce needs and gaps analysis, and so there's some material the Chamber's working on for that. The Steps Up, the internship program, successful here in Newburgh. Connecting regional CTE resources, so that's thinking of high school, how do you connect with PCC, how do you connect with Shemeketa, how do you connect with private schools like organizations, the Anvil Academy is another one, trying to make all of those pieces fit together. We actually brought Boeing out and toured, and they were looking at what we're doing in Yamhill County and looking at different communities, and some of the stuff they're trying to do with the new OMIC facilities, we're already doing it at a different scale, but we're already doing it here locally. They were like, wow. The Tasting Room Associate Program, Chamber expanded that. So been some mentoring at the high school, so going in talking about, with the different career pathways, and going in and talking to kids about opportunities for entrepreneurship and so forth. We've tried to do some collaboration with PCC and Climb. We've run into kind of a brick wall on that one, so we're working on it. The Business Resource Center, we found that was a challenge, and so we're looking at a different model. Instead of a bricks and mortar kind of approach, it's more of a virtual model. But again, you can see some of the successes that are here. And then we had the tourism piece, 2 strategies and 8 actions on this one. So outreaching, we're working on that. Signage and gateway elements, working on that. Subcommittee of the TLT committee, we're talking about marketing and advertising and branding. Chamber's working on a buy local campaign. I'm having conversations with hotel developers about opportunities to build additional hotel rooms within the community. We did the TLT work group, checked that one off. We got the tourism plan done, checked that off. Created the TLT ad hoc committee, and the committee's up and running and meeting on a monthly basis and moving forward. And then there was in there, you'll see a lot of additional things that we worked on over the first year. Data gathering, promoting the enterprise zone. The Roundtable Economic Development Summits really ties back to the Yamhill, the Economic Vitality Summits that were 2 of those that were held. A lot of coordination with regional solutions. We finished the Transportation and Water Master Plan updates. Council approved the street maintenance fee, the TUF program. There was lobbying going on for the bypass and additional $22 million for design work. We're working on the sanitary sewer master plan. Still continuing to try to push forward that whole cogeneration facility discussion. We inventoried all of the vacant lands within the downtown area. Now we have the buildable lands inventory, so we got another set of data that's there. And we'll be working, we did some work, we'll be doing some additional work on just underutilized sites and vacant building spaces. The Chamber's trying to get together a data set for that. Downtown improvement plan for infrastructure, we got that done. Made some connections between George Fox and PCC on the entrepreneurs, which is all tied back to the accelerator. Promoting chamber programs, George Fox programs. Job fairs are happening, semi-annually. So one in Newburgh, one in McMinnville. Chamber's been promoting Yamhill County's economic grant programs. One of the things we talked about, and city managers heard this, and I think he's supported as well, is like we don't have a master event calendar to know what's going on. Different organizations are dealing with their piece. So we had a meeting this week. It's like, well, no, you need to get your information to this organization. You got to get your information to this organization. In coordination of local events and so forth. So this is the core group that we meet once a month for anywhere from an hour to 2 hours and go through status of what's going on. We did a rollout in July to that Target at the beginning, invited all of them to come. We had about 30 people here, went through this PowerPoint presentation of what we were able to accomplish over the first year. And the feedback I've gotten back from is like, wow, you guys got a lot done. You must have a lot of people working on it. It's like, well, no, it's really, that's the list.
You and your schizophrenic brother.
Brothers. That's it, Mayor.
Any questions, comments? Yes, Councilor Johnson.
I see on here a mention of evaluate the feasibility of a downtown urban renewal program. Where are we with that, and are we at the point of hiring a consultant to do that work? I've seen that happen in other communities. I'm just curious where we're at with that process.
Well, we had the one conversation with council about kind of what urban renewal is. We got money budgeted this year to do a feasibility study. Your question is timely because the city manager asked me a couple of weeks ago, when are we going to start on this? I said, well, after I get back from vacation. There's some timing issues that I need to pay attention to. So, as you know, West Rock is looking for a purchaser of the mill site. So we know we have our downtown area. And so when we go through and do a feasibility study, we have to make some assumptions. So one assumption is, well, the infrastructure that's on the mill site stays, which has X value. You can make another assumption that says, well, it gets wiped clean, and so you don't have that value. One of the things you don't want to, so if we looked at an urban renewal district that included downtown and then went down Blaine or River and picked up some portion of the Riverfront area, if you establish something that has a high value and the value goes away, decades before you'd ever get back to the value before you start creating any increments. So it's a timing piece. So it's something that, I would say probably in September, later September, October, start to work for putting together a scope for consultant services to start to do that evaluation process.
And I would just offer that in the past I've been involved with the creation of an urban renewal district before over in Canby, and would love to be involved in that process somehow, just to hopefully correct some of my wrongs from the past. So, follow on, if I might, Mr. Mayor.
Follow on.
I also just wanted to really quickly tell you how impressed I am with this economic development plan and what you've been able to accomplish this year with the group of folks at the end. I mean, they all deserve, big kudos for doing this amount of work. I've seen other communities take these on and not get half of this stuff done. So just the fact that you're touching all the bases with a skeleton crew really tells me that we got a fine staff working on this, and fine volunteers and business people, and it's a great collaboration. So keep up the great work.
Councilor Murray. Councilor Murray.
My favorite, I think, reading this week was reading through the plan and seeing how much work's been put into it. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to be on council, because I want to see that list. I want all those action items done. I think it's going to make us a better community. I'm really excited to see the progress, and I look forward to the updated report to see how we're coming along on the rest of the things. So I just wanted to have that comment.
Any others? Doug, thank you very much for the update and keeping us posted and the progress we've made. And we are making progress, and I thank you and the staff, those involved. With that, we move to council business, and I have 2 or 3 items here that I wanted to share with you. One, the city manager shared with me that I would like to share with you and others that are in the room. And I direct this also to new members on our council, is the Newburgh Dundee Police Citizens Academy. And there is an announcement here. Classes begin on September 12th. It's Tuesday night, 6 to 9, one Saturday class. And this is a great program. You have done this.
I've signed up for it.
You did sign up. I've done this some years back. Did anybody else done this? You have signed up. This is great. So those of you that have, good. Those of you that haven't, they still have room, Chief?
I don't know. I'm trying, the coordinator is gone on vacation. I've sent an email asking how many applications we have.
for those of you that may be interested that haven't signed up, you can check in with the chief in the very near future, because they need to get this ready to go. So I thank you for that. I was absent during your work session. I had previously committed to welcoming new students at George Fox University. They have new students in. The enrollment this year is going to probably be at or maybe a little bit more, but it's very little more than the enrollment we had for last year. A very enthusiastic group. Today is their first day back on campus, and they are there. And we had a change of name today at our Parkway Committee. There will be a non-official meeting, but a day to introduce the public to the bypass, and they're going to call it now Play on the Bypass, and that will be 9/23. Not picnic on the bypass, but play on the bypass. And CPRD is doing a 10K. They will have opportunities for people to walk on the bypass. They will have parking available to get in the area for the bypass is being coordinated. There are more to come. So you might want to put the morning 10 to 2 on September 23rd. And that's something that I've been toying with for the last 2 or 3 or 4 weeks that I'd like to share with you, that I'm going to suggest that we really take it to heart. And this is what I'm calling council etiquette. And you each have a copy of this. Please take a good, long, hard look at it. And at a later meeting, I would like to consider this being adopted into and become part of our council rules. So take a look at this. Council etiquette as to how we work with and through each other on our council activities. Is there anything else to come before council business at this time? None appearing, then, I am prepared to recess our regular session and move into executive session. And I'm looking at an executive session dealing with labor relations, and we will now be working on that. And in this particular case, the Newburgh City Council will meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660 sub 2 sub D that allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor relations. No decisions will be made in executive session, and at the executive session, the council will return to open session. Welcome the audience back if there is anybody in. Representatives of the news media are not allowed to attend the executive session held under this subsection. Designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session held under subsection 2A. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. We will wait now until the room is cleared.
We have a bathroom break as part of this.
You may. We will be in recess while the room is cleared. 10, 15, 20 minutes, how much do you need?